What did the hunter-gatherer do? Hunted and played. It hasn't left us for 300,000 years.
Yeah, but the question is, obviously we are a bit more on this planet right now.
Right now, because the level of consciousness has raised, we've got the...
And we have to take into consideration that there are other people wanting the same stuff. So how do we share that? And in my view, humanity thinks too tribal. We think too much about our religion, our skin color, our community, our kids, and not... I think the awareness that the penguins have got, that they are all connected.
See, I just don't agree. The reason why I don't agree is because you don't think like that and I don't think like that. We're talking about a specific of people who run our world. I hate saying it like that, but they do. Who have specific ideas.
And they have, some of them have an astonishing amount of followers who think that way too.
Yeah, but don't be too sure that those followers are too conscious of where they are. And I don't think those...
Probably not, but they have very clear ideas who they identify with. And that is, in my view, the quality difference between penguins who are well aware. They are all connected and they will not survive if they don't share equally.
See, I don't want to get political, but
I don't think we have reached that
no, we haven't.
level of consciousness yet that
we haven't.
That we don't survive if we don't share better than we do right now.
I don't think... I think you're absolutely right. Look, here's a prime example. Trump was surrounded by big business. Okay? It goes without saying. And everybody was waiting for Biden to come in. Biden was coming, and what happens? His lobbyists were big tech. It's the same thing. We can't change that unless we have a huge revolution in our level of consciousness on this level.
Yes, that's exactly right. We can only change ourselves anyway.
Look, I'm a capitalist. I believe in creating for the benefit of everybody. I believe that's what I do. I believe that people circulate money in my direction and I share my share my knowledge. So I basically, if you like, I love the way this was expressed one time. You take the mess of you and you believe that I have enough sorted out mess in me that my little bit of less mess, i.e. the singing world, will make your world a little less messy. So I believe in that exchange. But we aren't allowed to run free with what we exchange.
No, and we I think it sharing should be really like the penguins do, warmth and cold.
That's right.
We should share the good and the bad times. We should, I mean, like in a marriage too. You can't just say, I just want good sex and the rest I'm not interested. What you want, I don't care. Yeah. We have to take care of each other's needs. And that was actually quite interesting, coming back to that Marshall Rosenberg. He talks a lot about those needs and that we have to understand each other's needs, and that has to be expressed in communication as well. And I see that very clearly in communication. I make a very distinct difference between listening and listening with interest. Sometimes I'm in a conversation and I can see that person clearly believes he's right. That means he's willing to listen to what I want to say only because he wants to be polite, but he's not really interested. He knows he's right. And now and then he gives me a little bit to say something just to be polite, and then he comes with his wisdom and his truth. And that's obviously not very fulfilling to have a communication like that. But I want to come back to how reality is created. My belief
But sure, you didn't want to come back to that other thing, because you never actually got an answer from me in terms of what I believe in terms of the nature-nurture thing. I never actually answered you. I was answering in only one way, and that was that I was only answering one part of the question, and that
you
is...
said the nature and...
It was basically, the nature was the evolution side.
Okay.
But you're actually starting to answer it right tonight, what I believe. Because I'm slowly changing, not so much a belief, I'm changing my hope.
Yeah?
My hope is becoming greater.
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely with my physical development in life. I'm aware that that's super important. And I haven't got much of a future if I don't nurture hope. And I think that is the same. That is not just on the physical level. That is very much, we thrive more with hope. And that was a discovery for me, that once it comes to climate change, my hope hasn't been that great. And it is important for me to change that. Otherwise, I need a good body chemistry just to survive is one thing, but then to be useful and meaningful, I need that as well. Yeah.
But I think the thing is what... You see, I don't think we're static beings.
No, we aren't.
And
the question, but not every development will lead to something, to a rosy future.
No, but even that is quite good.
Nature will always win, but the question is if humans are part of that or not. And I would find it a little bit pitiful if my kids won't have a longer line of their kids and so on, if that suddenly stops and only cockroaches would be on the planet. I love a lot of humans.
Do you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because I can't say enough. I really can't say enough about how much I love human beings. I mean, I cannot say it. It's almost like there are no words in any of the languages that I know, which is 2.5.
Then you are a lucky person.
I can't. And the reason why I can't is because I sat in that room listening to person after person after person for 20 years now. This is my 20th years of teaching. I've done 15 of those years here, pretty much. And I know mechanics. I know about the lungs.
Yeah.
I know how they vibrate the folds and they resonate in the pharynx.
And that makes you love humans, right?
Well, that's just the biology.
I know.
I won't say his name, but I had a Serbian chap. And he sang after a few months of teaching. He was singing one of his Serbian songs. And I remember a tear coming from his eye as he sang. We are so much more than mechanics and biology.
Wow. Hopefully.
And
we reduce our divine spark if
we reduce it to 8 hours a day in front of a screen, saying that the dollar is our master, you know? And I've seen, I have an exercise called the gibbon. You see, and it's about embodiment. So you don't go, ooh, ooh, ooh. You see, it's a different feeling.
Yeah.
And I've had a person cry when they do it because they have to face something about themselves, the embarrassment, the fact that I have to look silly.
Yeah, and letting something out.
Something's held on to. This is something very expressive. I can't afford to not have faith in the human spirit.
Yeah.
Shall I tell you a little story? I had an Austrian teacher. His name was Mark Haydn. And when I was 22, I was very religious back then. I'd just come back from serving a mission as a Mormon. And he asked me, he said, Charlie, what do you think of... this is how he spoke, exactly like this. He says, what do you think of the world, Charlie? I said, it's all right, Mark. He said, no. What do you think is coming off the world? And I said, what do you mean? Think of all the immorality and what did he say? And the murder. Like this. And I said, Mark, I have great faith in God and I have a great faith in the human spirit. He says, do you, Charlie? He says, I am a very religious man. And he was quite a religious man. And I believe in God. I do hope you're right, Charlie. I said, no, I believe that we will find a way, Mark. He says, I do hope you're right. Because frankly, I think we are going to fucking hell.
Yeah, but that is, it is in some way, in the humorous way you described that, that's a decision that we all have to do. What do we believe in? And today it was for me the discovery that there are corners I wasn't aware of where my generally hopeful spirit, or my spirit filled with hope, where that spirit wasn't going to. There were some corners where they were left out. But I want to come back to that belief, what creates reality. And my view is it's a co-creation between two parts. Maybe there are other parts too, but for me it's two main parts. One is my own thoughts and feelings. They create reality. I believe in the quantum physicists in that. And then I believe there is a spiritual element. They are, that's my funny way of seeing those guys arranging certain things for me. So I see that as a co-creation. They roll out some kind of red carpet, and on that red carpet there is a lot of freedom for me to create something, either consciously or subconsciously, but I do co-create. And that gives me a lot of pleasure to think I'm not the victim of karma. But it's not that easy that I can create whatever I want and I will get it. That would be too primitive either. So there is the element of surprise, because I'm not only the co-creator. I can't just say I'm thinking and feeling and visualizing that, and then that happens exactly the way I visualized it. Luckily, there's room for
there's a margin of error in there, and
yes, and another element. And I came across once a guy, and I absolutely liked his philosophy. He said, I think I've mentioned that to you already once, he's positively paranoid.
Oh, yeah.
So he believes there are forces out there, they are plotting something, but not against him, they're plotting for him. So the universe supports you. And that is, by the way, that is a belief that I trained myself to believe in. So that is a fingering that I developed over the years.
Yeah, good.
To believe the universe supports me, or the God, or however you want to call it. And for me, the word God is so often used in circumstances that I don't like, that I don't use it myself anymore. But it doesn't matter what label we give it. But I do believe there are forces, they want to support me. And it's a really good feel that I sometimes, for example, that I was allowed to become a father, although my tiny little brain tried to avoid it. There were other forces in play. They overruled me, and I'm super happy and glad and grateful that my life was overruled. My own little plans were not. They didn't.
Well,
have
what do they
enough-
say? The best laid plans of mice and men. You know.
Yeah.
Well, here's an interesting. In Mormonism, there's a scripture that comes from modern revelation. So Joseph Smith supposedly got this revelation. I quite like this, actually, because even if he was the biggest bloody con man around, he had a way with words. And it goes like this. There is a law irrevocably decreed in heaven upon which all blessings are predicated. If you do what I say, you have a promise. And if you do not what I say, there is no promise. And I really like that. So basically, it's cause and effect.
Yes, but pretty radical.
Pretty radical. It's basically saying that if you do something, there will be some kind of consequence at the end for which there may be a reward. And there may also be those things for which you don't do, which...
It will be the opposite of reward.
But also, there's also...
But that is, Charles, that is really something that doesn't sit with me at all. That is dealing with fear. It has been done a lot in religion, and I think it caused an awful lot of damage.
If you take it out of its religious context and you give it the cause and effect, it has a far more sense.
Yeah.
Let's face it, we've been speaking about cause and effect a lot. Your mother's manifestation of gratitude is
had an effect.
Cause and effect. And it's a physical effect. Not only is it a physical effect, it's an emotional, mental, psychological effect. It's just an amazing thing. So there is this thing, you know, when you pick up the stick, you pick up the end of the stick as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I wanted to just put one thing out there. There are some things, you know, where it says, you said, you know, if you do something and you'll get the result of it. And if you don't do something, you'll also get the result of it.
Get a different one, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't always have to be the negative.
Yeah. And
I think sometimes it's a good idea not to do anything.
Yeah, and I think it would be a very wise choice not to get too much carried away with the end result. I think the process is so much more important.
It's the story of the symphony.
Yes. It's
not about the last note.
No. I mean, that would be awful if we just, but I think in our society, in our Western thinking, we are educated to look very much to the end result rather than to the process.
And yet, this is exactly what Ken Robinson... Funny enough, I had a very similar conversation with, this about 3 weeks ago now, Emma Jacket Simpson. Really fascinating, because Ken Robinson was a professor, and he said, you know, in the East, yes, they value maths and the languages, but they also value dance and music in education. The Steiner School tends to do the same thing, right?
Exactly.
Now, I want to make a point here. I believe it's a little bit like seeing the tree in the forest. The tree falls down in the forest. I believe it does make a noise. Okay, and I believe that you can see the thing. You know, I mean, it actually does fall. I don't think there's any question in my mind that the tree falls down and it makes a noise. I don't have to be there to hear it. However, what we've done in the West is that we have the manifestation of the tree falling down, but we aren't conscious enough to hear it. So what we do is we've got plenty of people dancing and playing music, and they are constantly showing the journey.
Yeah.
But what we've done is belittled the value of the dance. And I mean that right across the board. It's not because we don't value dance and music. It's just that we've said the final note is worth more.
Yeah.
So the dance is going on in the West. The music is going on. There are plenty of people manifesting the dance. It's not that it's not going on. The tree is still falling. It's only that we're not looking. That's the only difference. That is the only difference. There's plenty of people I'm on a journey right now. I really am. And you know what? Never going to end. It doesn't have a... And look, I've said, if I'm going to be buried, if they have enough money to do this, and I hope they do, and they can spend my millions on it, I want to be buried beneath a tree to become compost. Okay, that's what I want. That's what I want. Because I couldn't think of anything better than to give life to the thing that has given life to me. That tree. What a very cyclical, circulating life.
I mean, that was another reason why I like reincarnation. It's cyclical. It's, I think, only few things in life go straight from A to B and end there.
Life isn't linear.
Exactly.
Life is an exponential thing. It's quite funny. Oh God, and I don't mean this to sound egotistical, but it will sound that way. And I'm very careful about my ego because I know it can be out of hand.
Oh, I mean, we all have it.
No, but I know we say we all have it. But when I talk about me in terms of my ego, I'm very serious, Martin. I mean, it can be the enemy.
Oh, it always can.
Yeah, always can. So I'm just being careful.
And that is exactly where I sometimes have still a question marks, us comparing against the penguins. They have obviously not enough ego to endanger the whole species. They just don't do it.
But okay.
Either they have that built-in wisdom. If we don't do that under really challenging circumstances, we all die. They must have that built in. I mean, to have such an elaborate system where nobody cheats, I find that still fascinating, that there is this wisdom built in. They wouldn't survive otherwise. And I wonder, coming back to climate change, if we have... That is, for me, the snowstorm. Yeah,
it's the existential question.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if we have that built-in wisdom to work collectively, looking after each other, like your older daughter had towards her younger daughter, feeling for the needs of each other.
You've just manifested the hope. My daughter and my other daughter. Your daughter and that lovely positive thing about her Class 12 project,
Yeah? So, I have to say, each time I see I'm part of I visit the Class 12 projects, for me, they are days of hope. It's just phenomenal.
Do you remember Massa?
Yes.
Building a robot.
Yes.
Right? And what's his words? We were supposed to look for a mentor, but I didn't need one. So look here. Look. I want to. You've got two things bubbling up here, so I want to be able to deal with them. I was talking about my ego.
Yes.
Okay. So this is what's happened to me. I'm a man not of great means, but I have enough. Do I want more? Yes, I do. But I want it relative to the output that I produce. So in other words, I'm not going to want anything beyond the capacity I have to generate it.
So you want it to get it in a meaningful way.
Meaningful way. But here's the deal. And this is just the miracle of life. And this is why I have so much faith. And because it's happening in my life. You see, opportunities are coming my way. And I'm going to be very careful how I say this word. I've become more attractive. And I don't mean that aesthetically. There are some opportunities that I'm looking at now. And I've done nothing for them other than acting in the purpose that I had initially set out.
There's nothing more needed.
Right, okay.
The universe, if you believe the universe supports you, then it's a logical step.
Okay. Now, it's very hard for a person who has zero to think that life is nothing but a linear and drop off. and it exponentially drops off. So I haven't started with zero. I've got lots. My family's invested in me. I've invested in me. Society's invested in me. I had a church, in actual fact, for all of its problems, invested in me. So I don't see this as me, but I'm grateful that it's me.
Yeah.
And so what I see now is this, and I learned this through singing. I'll give you an example. When we breathe in, gently and slowly and deeply, the soft palate raises. It doesn't do it because I want it to. It does it because it's part of the breath mechanism. And when I'm going to express something, the soft palate raises even more because I'm going to say something significant.
Okay.
All right. Now what happens is when you become conscious of the soft palate raising, you augment its capacity to resonate.
Yeah.
Only by thinking. Only by thinking. If I go, now look, watch. I'm now going to think about it. Suddenly that palate's just raised and that's slightly more resonant. That's life.
Yeah.
We have things that naturally happen. Just naturally happen. They happen by the manifestation of our own actions. And then what happens? We optimize it by thinking.
Yeah, that's. But I think there are two parts to that. That is if everything works naturally. And we can distort nature by tension, by stress, by not good thoughts. So you can, that natural process, you can interrupt it by doing something energetically in a negative way.
Yes.
And you can do the opposite. I do believe by becoming more conscious what we are doing, we can, I'm German, I like efficiency. We can become more efficient.
Yeah.
And for me, it's still fascinating how much thought changes. That's the longest lever we've got.
You can change the vibration in the air. How many times have you heard this? And you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. How many times have you heard that expression? Somebody talks to you and there's a negative feeling in the air,
okay.
right?
Yeah,
and somebody says, you could cut the knife. You cut the air with a knife. The air was thick with that negativity.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Isn't it funny?
No
one says anything to anybody, but yet there's a coldness. That's really funny, isn't it? It's really funny. By not saying anything, by manifesting some kind of malevolent, deep feeling against
something. I think we do that all the time.
We do.
The question is, are we conscious of what we do?
That's right.
And then once we become more conscious, choosing the thought process, they are helpful.
Yeah.
And that was for me really helpful tonight to see that with all the practice that I did to open myself up to hopefulness, there are some corners where I haven't approached it to. And it's very good to know. So there's room for improvement.
Well, we've said that, haven't we? And you said that about that chap who said, what did he say? You said something just before there's room for improvement. You said something else. That guy in the men's group. He said.
No, he said exactly that.
He said there's room for improvement, but I thought there was one phrase before that.
No,
I
said it more. I said I'm pretty good, and there's room for improvement.
Yes, that's right. That
is my thing. If you just say there's room for improvement, then I don't comment on how I am. And if I actually acknowledge I was already worse than now, then I can already say I'm pretty good. But I want the universe to know I see some room for improvement and you can do something about it.
Yes.
And believing in that co-creation,
yes.
I play the ball to those guys. That, have you heard that? Yeah, there's room for improvement. I just want you guys that you heard that.
And co-creation is actually manifested best with two independent beings.
Yeah.
Rather than two beings that rely on each other. They rely on themselves and then manifest together.
But it's an energetic connection.
Oh, that's right. There has to be.
That's
I'm getting away from my microphone now.
That's why I like that co-creation concept. Nothing happens with me taking part in it, because then those guys have nothing to. We don't know what Martin wants. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I sometimes say in conversation with young people, if you don't know what you do, just do something. We had a builder on David. David, if you ever hear that, that's for you. He built a lot on our property on the South Island. He's an interesting chap. Hasn't got it always easy with himself. But anyway, he has a great heart. And he worked a lot for us. And he said he learned from an old builder. And the old builder told him, David, once you get stuck, you don't know how to solve a problem, just do something. 9 times out of 10, you will be all right. But if you just sit there and don't know what to do and fiddle your thumbs, nothing changes. So the idea, if you are unclear, just do something. I really like that concept.
It reminds me of, there's a chap, and Bo, if you're looking at this, and you're probably so busy you'd never look at it, but anyway, his name's Bo Short. And he was a businessman, and he said he was promoting a business. This was, again, 25 years ago, in the same business convention that I was speaking about earlier on. And the idea behind it was to promote this particular business. But that wasn't his attitude. He wasn't there. He was there to make leaders out of the people. And this was a phrase that stuck with me for these past 25 years. He's American. He said, if you don't do this, do something great with your life. And I love that. Because what he was saying was that, hey, look, this may not be for you. There are plenty of games we can play in life. There's various levels of games that we can play. We're not stuck with one game.
No, not at all.
And
the game might change anyway.
It does. Look, I was saying this earlier on. I mean, now I'm no fan of China, okay? I think it's got some plans. It's built a military island off its coastline. So anybody who builds a military island off their coastline, they haven't got my vote. But anyway, in 1978, this was the figures, they couldn't feed 700 million of their people. But as of 2018-19, they couldn't feed 16 million of their people. Now, there's a country, it's got plenty of human rights issues, But it doesn't stay still.
No, it never does.
And
that is another part of my philosophy. And it does help me once something happens that I perceive as particularly shitty. I know it doesn't stay that way. I mean, it can get worse too, but it's not static. Life is rarely static. It's normally evolving somewhere, either towards something or away from something. And that can be a comforting thought that nothing stays. That's nothing. Right. It's always...
My mother used to say this very similar thing. She said, if things don't, she said, no, hold on, I'm going to get this wrong, aren't I? If things don't stay the same, they remain as... No, if things don't stay the same, they remain as they are. So, do you know what I mean? I mean,
yes.
In other words,
yes.
In actual fact, what she was saying is things don't remain the same, they remain as they... If things don't stay the same, they remain as they are. In actual fact, she was saying they're changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only thing that's certain in life is change.
And death. Death is pretty certain too.
Well, we think it's certain, but I think that's, and this is me getting a bit too religious, but I think it's because we have the lens of mortality. We see it through the lens of mortality. And yet, if we could understand what immortality truly is and eternity is, we may not see this as mortality. We've got a word for it. We manifest ourselves as living beings that are skeletal, with gravity pulling on us and making our muscles grow, etc., like this, and we believe that's life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I manifested myself as dirt, if I'm compost, am I alive some other way? Does my spirit go somewhere else?
Yeah.
How about the electrical impulses that were in my brain?
I mean, death in the way that this existence, as Martin, how he presented himself in this life, that one then does.
It is certain,
yeah, and that's in some way it's a nice thing too. That is, I actually find life very just. If I think in the concept of reincarnation, we're all on that journey. We all learn something. We all have something left over that we haven't learned. And everybody has their backpack. One has it more heavy one, some more light one, some carries it more on the head and some more on the shoulder. So, but we all, in my view, we all are here on a learning journey.
Yeah.
And since I believe that it's a cyclic journey, that means I don't have to nut everything out in this one life.
Do you know, it's quite funny. I said this a long time ago when I was slowly but surely coming out of Mormonism. Of course, Christianity and religion generally is about certainty. We're certain that we're going to have a life after death. We're certain that it's this church. We're certain that it's this prophet. We're certain that it's this book. And so I had to say something to break up that cycle that would break the certainty.
Yeah.
So I could start to live comfortably with uncertainty.
Yeah.
And so I said this. I said, I'm not certain of anything. And those things of which I am certain, I'm probably wrong. And I needed to say that.
Do you know the movie Dean Spaniel?
No, I don't.
Oh, you should watch that too.
Okay.
There is one sentence that I really like, amongst others, but that one stuck. Only the closed mind never doubts.
That's very true.
And I
love that.
Like that.
It's a beautiful phrase.
People who are, it's normally the fundamentalists who never doubt. They know they're right. That means the guy who doesn't agree with them is wrong. And that makes that view quite dangerous in my view. So
anybody who's evangelical to the point of the only lens through which they can see life is the preeminent value of their ideology. That's the person,
Yeah. And I have, amongst people who were at times of my life friends, I have had people who were like that.
I've got plenty of them.
They didn't stay friends, but for a while that was the way it was. And then I realized that, it's difficult to maintain friendships once you can't have a conversation where you can, vice versa, listen with interest. If you know you're right, why would you listen with interest?
You see, I listened to you, and just on the subject of listening, because much of what you say validates my belief in the human spirit. Matter of fact, your very being, Martin, just even if you didn't say anything, the fact that you've
Do you mean if I just would sit here and fart a bit, you would be excited?
I think your farts would probably be special.
I hope so.
I'll tell you a little story about farts in a moment. But I know. But the fact that we're speaking together, and what that does for me is it says, well, yes, of course there's hope, and well, of course with Mark, I'm going to ask you to speak on another podcast, not my own, but somebody else's.
Okay.
Yeah. After this, I'll give you. I think, we should draw to a close, I think, because we've spoken for a long time. I think
Yes.
I think there's something like 3.5 hours already.
I have no clue.
Yeah. I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered.
No, but I do get now a little bit tired. I have to say.
Yeah. Well, I get tired, and I've got to teach tomorrow. But those things are. I have this feeling that this could be the beginning of something for you and for me, actually, because I feel that what we've discussed this evening, even though the ideas are bouncing from one thing to another, and we've spoken about reincarnation, and I've spoken about my little knowledge about climate change and how I'm probably overly hopeful in comparison to the rest of the world.
There isn't overly.
Well,
if that is something
it's useful
that helps you lead a good life and do good things with your life, because you are full of good energy and hope. Hope, beliefs are never about certainties.
No.
That's why I can choose it.
That's right.
I mean, that is the wonderful thing. Once I understood that, there isn't something like right or wrong. I choose something that sits well with me.
Yes, I think,
that's why I can quite happily say that's what I believe.
Right.
And if somebody said that's rubbish, that's fine. You don't have to believe in it as well. It's a belief that serves me well.
But there is the argument. There is the argument, though, that my overly hopefulness in things could be detrimental. There's some who will say it was detrimental to the progress of climate change.
There's a possibility. Yes, there is. But there's a possibility if you would believe everything turns to shit. That would make you depressed, and you would sit there and would not teach.
Which is okay. Okay, I'm going to make a climate change truth bomb, or for some it may not be a truth bomb. I believe that mankind is doing a lot of damage to the planet. Okay, that's kind of as far as I go. I can't get too much in depth because the rest of it's been politicized. But I can say this. I know some things that I've seen that are true. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to tell you. Did you know that America and Russia and China have planted more trees than the rest of the world? Year 2019 than the rest of the world. They planted more trees than they cut down. North America.
North America?
North America.
Wow.
2019 planted more trees, including Russia, including China, planted more trees than they cut down.
Wow. Yeah, that is...
it's hard to believe, isn't it?
Very.
Right, okay. Now, we have to stop cutting down the Amazon. All right? We do need to convert to non-pollutant products. I believe that.
Well, we need to change quite a few things. But you are absolutely right. The question is, if we don't believe in the possibility, that would be the equivalent of, with a health thing, to believe there's only one way and that's going downhill.
So people, this is what
I would give fuel to an outcome that I don't want.
Right. Okay. So this is why I don't like the words climate change denial. So for instance, I believe that the climate changes.
It changes all the time.
Changes all the time. Okay. So there's no denying climate changes. I believe in man has made contributions towards it. Mm-hmm. Okay. But I also believe that mankind, through the incremental level of consciousness that he's gaining, is doing incredible work, such as planting more trees, such as getting back to the place where, right now, an African kid in the Congo is mining the batteries, is mining the cobalt for the batteries. All right. Now, I used to look at that as a terrible negative thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then I saw that I've got this friend in the UK who does.
You saw that you needed a battery for your torch and thought it's actually a good thing.
Well, no. Do you remember? We used to talk about the Victorian children who used to go up chimneys, right? Mm-hmm. And then it became law that up to a certain age they would have education, right? And the education they used to have was up until the age of 12, and then they used to start work. And these 12-year-old kids used to work in factories and everything. Today we wouldn't even think about it. Mm. But here's the deal. That kid back then, 150 years ago now, roughly, he had an opportunity which was not available to him, until that law was passed. He could be educated up until he was 12 or something. That little kid in the Congo who's doing that mining, it's dreadful. Mm-hmm. I don't want anybody thinking at all that I don't think it's dreadful. But in actual fact, that little kid right now is supporting his family and he's making a small amount of money. It's nothing. It's terrible, but it's something. So there's a bittersweet to our progress. We mine these materials. We've got other nations mining them. And one day we've got to raise our level of consciousness, not just to making the battery, but to who makes the battery, how it's mined. At the moment, we've raised our consciousness to we need the battery, but we haven't raised our consciousness enough to say how that battery is mined or how it's disposed of.
Yeah. I mean, that was before my thing that I think this sharing amongst humans, there's definitely room for improvement.
There is.
And my thing is, I think we have to believe the scientists that the window with climate where we can actually still achieve something to the point where the planet stays livable for human beings, we have to believe them and take action with everybody in mind. I mean, for example, people living on islands when the sea level rises, we have to think about those guys too. And at the moment, I think there is definitely still a lot of room for improvement to think more about the good of everybody rather than the freedom of a few and the profit of a few.
I think freedom's got a bit of a bad rap recently. Had a terrible argument with somebody about the word freedom. You see, I think freedom is what is under threat more than anything else.
But uncontrolled freedom is a threat in its own.
Well, I think
freedom has to.
If you look at corporate freedoms, yes, they have to be reined in.
Every freedom has to take the well-being of everybody into account, and not every individual is developed to that point where that happens.
This is true.
Otherwise, we wouldn't need laws.
This is true.
Do you know that in Germany, I went through a red light?
Yes, you told me that.
And with a bicycle, and there were policemen in the queue of the red light, and they overtook me later and said, or if I knew what I did, and I said, yes, I crossed a red light because I could see that from the other street that was crossing, nobody was coming. And I think we have to make sure that our action don't hurt somebody, and that was what I told those police guys. I said, I didn't hurt anybody. If my action would have hurt somebody or endangered somebody, I can understand why I get fined, but I didn't do that. And then I asked him, who did I damage or endanger? And then he said, the taxpayer. I said, look, you don't believe that yourself, do you? Anyway, my point is we need as a species to learn more that our actions influence the well-being of people around us.
But we do need to change our language.
In which way?
For instance, we need to stop calling ourselves a cancer on the world. We need to stop calling ourselves a plague.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that either.
No. I'm just saying, but you see, we need to stop telling our children that the world is ending. We need to start talking about hope.